Imagine, if you will, a quiet working-class neighborhood in North London. The year is 1977. The world hums with disco music, color televisions, and growing disbelief in the supernatural. But on one ordinary street, 284 Green Street, Enfield, a single mother and her 4 children are about to become the center of the most documented and debated haunting in modern history. What started as knocks in the night would soon spiral into an event so bizarre, so terrifying, that even hardened skeptics were forced to reconsider the impossible. This is the Enfield Poltergeist. The Hodgson family lived an ordinary life. Peggy Hodgson, a 40-year-old single mother, did her best to raise her 4 kids. Margaret, age 13, Janet, 11, Johnny, 10, and Billy, 7. Their home, a modest 2-story council house, sat in a row of identical brick homes in Enfield, a quiet suburb of North London. But everything changed one late August night in 1977. Janet and Johnny had gone to bed when they complained that their beds were shaking. Peggy brushed it off as imagination, kids seeking attention. But then came the knocking. 3 loud, deliberate knocks from the walls. Knock, knock, knock. Peggy went upstairs. The noise stopped. She turned off the lights and left. Then came another 3 knocks. Louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. That's when the heavy chest of drawers began to move, slowly sliding across the room floor on its own. Peggy pushed it back. It moved again. She pushed harder, but this time, the chest pushed back. Panicking, she gathered the children and ran to the neighbor's house, calling the police. When Police Constable Carolyn Heaps arrived, she didn't expect much. But as she stood in the living room writing her report, she saw something she couldn't explain. A chair slid across the floor by itself. Later, she would testify under oath that she saw it move without any apparent cause. News of the haunting spread fast. Within days, the Daily Mirror sent a photographer, Maurice, to cover the story. As he set up his camera, a Lego brick flew across the room and hit him squarely on the forehead. He said it was like being hit by a bullet. That photograph of terrified children screaming became one of the most iconic paranormal images ever taken. Soon after, the Society for Psychical Research, SPR, sent 2 investigators, Maurice Grosse and Lyon Playfair. Both were veterans in the field of the unexplained. When they arrived, the house was alive with chaos. Objects flying, knocks echoing from the walls, toys thrown across rooms, and voices. Strange, guttural voices. The focus of the haunting seemed to be Janet, the 11-year-old daughter. Objects moved when she was near. Furniture flipped. Her body would levitate off the bed in front of witnesses, sometimes even in mid-air while people snapped photographs. But the most disturbing element came from her voice. Maurice Grosse began recording hours of audio of Janet speaking in a gravelly, male voice that claimed to be a man named Bill Wilkins. "Just before I died," the voice growled, "I went blind. Then I had a hemorrhage and fell asleep, and I died in the chair downstairs." Here is the real audio recording.
"I want you to tell me whether you remember what happened to you when you died. Just before you died and just after you died."
Days before I died, I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage and I fell asleep and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs. Days before I died, I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage and I fell asleep and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs.
Later, researchers discovered that a man named Bill Wilkins had in fact died years earlier in that same house of a brain hemorrhage while sitting in a chair. To this day, That fact remains one of the most chilling validations of the case. For 18 months, the Hodgsons were tormented. Furniture moved, curtains twisted, fires started on their own, and Janet was thrown from her bed repeatedly. Even reporters who came to debunk the case often left shaken. One journalist wrote, "There was no doubt something was happening in that house." However, not everyone was convinced. Skeptics accused Janet of being a ventriloquist and using tricks to move objects. Some believed the girls were faking it for attention. At one point, Janet was caught bending spoons and throwing objects, but Maurice Grosse defended her, saying, "Of course they faked some of it. Any child would. But you can't fake everything that happened here." Even American demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, the same couple who inspired the Conjuring films, visited the house. They claimed the events were real and warned that something evil was at work. By 1979, the activity finally stopped. Janet later said that she felt as if the spirit had gone away. But decades later, she continued to insist that 90% of what happened was real. Margaret agreed. "It lived off our energy," she said. "It fed on fear." Maurice Grosse and Guy Playfair also stood by their reports until their deaths. They recorded over 180 hours of audio evidence, including knocks, voices, and strange anomalies. Even to this day, researchers pore over those tapes, looking for answers. Now that we've walked through the events of Enfield, let's take a step back. If what happened to the Hodgsons wasn't a haunting, then what was it? There are 4 leading theories, each with its believers, each with its flaws. The first and most widely accepted paranormal explanation is that of the poltergeist, from the German words poltern, to make noise, and geist, spirit. Poltergeists are said to be mischievous or even malevolent entities that cause physical disturbances, moving objects, knocking on walls, and throwing things around. In parapsychology, poltergeist activity often centers around an individual, usually an adolescent going through emotional or hormonal changes. Janet Hodgson, at age 11, fit this profile almost perfectly. The idea is that the energy of emotional turmoil somehow fuels the activity, like static electricity charging a storm. The house on Green Street became that storm. Over 30 eyewitnesses, including police, neighbors, and journalists, reported seeing objects move or levitate. That's difficult to dismiss. If these accounts are to be believed, the Enfield case stands as one of the strongest documented examples of a true poltergeist haunting. But if that's true, what exactly is a poltergeist? Is it an independent spirit, or something that human energy, especially trauma, manifests into the physical world? If so, perhaps the haunting wasn't Janet's curse, but her cry for help. Theory 2, the psychological manifestation theory. Some researchers believe the answer lies not in ghosts, but in the human mind itself. This theory proposes that Janet and her family were under immense stress, financial hardship, the absence of a father figure, and the strain of living in post-war London. That stress, combined with a highly suggestible environment, may have triggered psychosomatic phenomena. Parapsychologist Dr. William Roll coined the term recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, RSPK, to describe similar cases. He suggested that emotional energy, under pressure, can somehow externalize itself, causing real, measurable disturbances in the environment. In other words, Janet might have been unconsciously causing the events herself, objects moving, knocks forming, without her even realizing it. Science hasn't yet proven such a thing as possible, but when 11-year-old Janet began speaking in that deep, masculine voice for hours at a time, without damaging her vocal cords, some researchers admitted something extraordinary was happening. Whether psychological or paranormal, it was beyond what ordinary explanation could reach. Of course, not everyone is convinced. The most popular skeptical explanation is that the entire haunting was an elaborate hoax. Critics point out that Janet and Margaret were caught on several occasions bending spoons, hiding tape recorders, and tossing objects when they thought no one was watching. The girls even admitted to faking a few things to test the investigators. To skeptics, that's all the proof needed. Children playing pranks that spiraled out of control once adults and media attention poured in. But here's the problem. A hoax doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the chair that slid across the floor in front of a police officer. It doesn't explain the voice recordings that continued for months. Recordings experts said would have shredded Janet's vocal cords if she had truly produced them. And it doesn't explain why the family kept the story going for years, with nothing to gain but ridicule and fear. If it was a hoax, it was a strangely self-destructive one. And finally, there's the demonic possession hypothesis, the darkest theory, the one proposed by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the famed American demonologists later depicted in The Conjuring 2. The Warrens believed the Hodgson home wasn't just haunted, it was infested. According to them, the entity calling itself Bill Wilkins was merely a mask, a lure used by something far more sinister. They claimed the house contained multiple presences, some pretending to be harmless while others fed off the family's fear. To the Warrens, it was a textbook case of demonic manipulation. Start small with noises, escalate to levitations, and finally, attempt possession. Whether you believe the Warrens or not, their involvement turned Enfield into an international sensation. And even today, some locals say the house still feels wrong. The new tenants don't report hauntings, but none of them stay long either. And so we're left with questions instead of answers. If it wasn't a hoax, and it wasn't a ghost, and it wasn't a demon, then what was it? Maybe the truth is a combination of all three. A house heavy with history, a family under pressure, and something unseen feeding off it all. So, what really happened inside that small, ordinary house on Green Street? Was it the desperate imagination of children seeking attention, or a glimpse into a world that watches us from the shadows, waiting for the moment our fear cracks the veil? For centuries, we've drawn a line between the living and the dead, between the seen and the unseen. But what if that line isn't as solid as we think? What if emotion, grief, anger, and loneliness are like open doors, and something, whatever it is, sometimes walks through? Maybe hauntings aren't just about ghosts. Maybe they're mirrors, reflections of the chaos we carry inside ourselves. Fear takes shape, and it answers back. The Enfield house still stands today. Families have come and gone. Children have grown up and forgotten. But walls remember things. They remember the sound of knocks that have no hands, the whispers that fade as soon as you listen, and the echoes of those who still seek to be heard. So tonight, as you turn off your lights and close your door, ask yourself, if something on the other side were trying to reach you, would you be brave enough to listen? I'm your host, Mr. X, and this has been Imagine If You Will.